welcome back, and we're going to have a debrief about the difference between individual, group, and team supervision, but first talk about similarities.
Well, I think what we were discussing was, the differences of between individual and group from a supervision perspective, and what the complexity of it, and how one can be put, as I speak for myself, the word complexity fills me with fear. So, people say, oh my God, this is so complex, then I don't want to go there. But that's not the way I have found it works for me in supervision. And I guess what I was saying was that for me, personally, when I do group supervision with team coaches, and there's always one or two team coaches in a group, the group has wisdom, a huge wisdom. And so, I don't have to know much. I know a bit. Inevitably, the team coach will probably know more than me because I don't do team coaching. I have done in the past, but I don't at the moment. And so the wisdom comes out, and it's not, I don't think you need to be scared of it, actually. I think you need to trust the group, trust the process. And I think the difference is that if you have one-on-one supervision with a coach, it's about that coach's, process and getting to know themselves better and working deeper. And if you're working with a team coach, I don't think it's any different. I think it's, but more about the challenges they're finding in their team, in the work they do with their team. That's what I think. Is probably very simplistic, but that's the way I look at it.
It's simplistic and complex. As you said before, complexity is one of the variables to pay attention to. What is the level of complexity? So, for example, if you're working one-on-one, you're focusing on one person. But if you're working with a group, you need to pay attention to the person bringing the case or the situation, the whole group as a group, and the dynamics and interaction between the members. And as Kevin said before, not everybody enjoys necessarily being a group supervisor because it requires to pay attention to all of these variables. But for me personally, like you, Monica, I love groups because of the wisdom and the learning from all of the participants. So it's like we are facilitating a process where we are supporting people to reflect, but at the same time in the process we learn together. That's the reason why many supervisors love supervision. And I know many who have told me, now if I had to choose between supervision and coaching, I would rather supervise than coach.
That's me.
Why? Because you're working with other coaches, with people who have same training, same distinctions, who may be willing to go deeper in the work. So that's some of the things to pay attention to. So thank you, Monica. From your group, anybody want to add anything? Jocelyn, Straban, anything else you would like to add?
I think
go ahead.
Sorry, just please go ahead.
Okay. Again, I'm coming from the team coach perspective who's been supervised in group and individually. I think that the other thing to throw out in teams, sometimes you pair up, like there's two coaches. And so there's an added layer, right? So whatever is going on in the team could be happening between you. There's that parallel process that's happening. It's really kind of like around the dynamics. And so when you think about going into supervision, then there is even another layer there that I don't want to use the word complexity, but makes it very emergent and interesting is really what it is, right? So that's all I wanted to add.
What is interesting what Monica said before is that sometimes people feel overwhelmed. So the coach may feel overwhelmed working with a team and the amount of information. So this is the challenge for the supervisor, not to get overwhelmed with that information when the coach comes to us in an overwhelming space. Sravan, we're going to share something.
My curiosity was, if you are supervising a coach and vis-a-vis you are coaching a team coach, what is the difference? Right? So that I think the group studies, it doesn't matter because whatever the coach brings in, whether he brings out the team coach challenges or as an individual coach, it's almost the same thing. So
that is a great point. There is not an answer to this question, but to the question is, if you do not have experience working with a team, can you still be a supervisor of a team coach? So you may find people who say yes, because supervision is supervision. As you can when you are
Exactly.
coaching executives, you will never be able to do their job, and you can still be very effective in coaching an executive that is doing a work that you will never be able to do. And in supervision, it's the same. Now, there are some people who may not agree. There are some supervisors who may say, if you want to be a team coach supervisor, you do need to have some experience in team coaching. Now, interestingly, for ICF, that now is a requirement to receive supervision to be a team coach. So this is what is different and new, is that for EMCC, it has been mandatory for more than 15 years to get supervision to renew your accreditations if you are accredited by the European Mentor and Coaching Council. But for ICF, it's only mandatory for team coaches to receive the accreditation. They need hours of supervision and also to renew the certification as team coaches. So, and here, Jocelyn, you have an opportunity because you do have experience as a team coach. Now you're going through supervision training. By then you finish, there is a market for that. There is a need and an opportunity. So I want you to answer your own question. You may or may not agree with that. How much experience do you need to have as a team coach to be a team coach supervisor? I want to leave it open for different perspectives. In the other room, we have Jocelyn, Monica, and Jaya, Paul, and Suman. Who would like to share?
I think we had a similar kind of conversation where we were first reflecting on our experiences and then realized that, yeah, actually that the reflection is all about the coach, whether it is team or individual. However, the layers of complexity changes. However, it's all about the coach who's driving, or the co-coach if it is a team coaching engagement. Supervision is supervision, like you said, and so many times the dynamics of the system impacts, and that's what it is. Like most of the times, it's a systemic dynamic that impacts the performance, confidence, even the interventions of the coach who's leading the effort. Anything, Suman, Paul, you want to join? You want to add?
Yeah, I think the example was given. I had a similar example where there were two co-coaches who did a team, and when one of them came for supervision, there was an issue of authority between the two, and that kind of played out in the team. So it was a parallel process because the co-coaches were struggling with authority, and you could see that emerge in the team. So yeah, to someone, I think someone spoke to that. It's like the different layers. It goes beyond just what's happening for the coach, but also the co-coach and the team. Yeah. And in the group coaching piece, we talked about the richness of the data that emerges, because although there's only one supervisor, but what's happening is it's like you're having multiple mirrors there to sort of experience what is going on. And somehow the group process brings up a lot more for everyone in the here and the now. So yeah, it's a lot more complex, I guess, different degrees of complexity as we go into the group and the team coach.
And one of the important jobs of the group supervisor is to create psychological safety. That is one of the key differences between individual and group supervision, because I prefer group supervision and individual supervision personally. Like I have more fun.
Yeah.
But also, if you don't have a good foundation for psychological safety, it can be challenging.
Yeah.
Because if people don't feel comfortable being vulnerable, it's going to be challenging for people to participate. And there is an issue that we don't talk enough. And personally, I feel that I don't talk enough. I have been training supervisors for many years, and I don't feel I talk enough about shame. And I do believe that there is an issue of shame that, okay, we want to look good. We don't want to look that something is wrong with us or that we are insecure, and the more experience we have, the more stress are around that.
Yeah.
I remember a story briefly I will share with you that I was training mentor coaches, not supervisors, mentor coaches. See, everybody here know the difference between mentor coaches and supervisors. Mentor coaches is about giving feedback. So I was training mentor coaches, and a colleague of mine was doing that too. And I asked her, can I go to your program so I can learn from you? How do you do that? So I can learn and enhance my program. So I went. That's Janet Harvey. Some of you may know her. She was a colleague of mine. We were sitting together in the board of directors at ICF. She was the president, and I was her president-elect, and then I became president after her. So I went to her program, and in the first one of the sessions, I had to coach somebody to receive mentoring. I was already an MCC at that time. I was the global president of ICF, and I did a terrible job. I did really, really bad job. This guy was not helping at all. My other colleague that I was coaching, and I was very upset. And I went to my coach, and at that time I didn't have a supervisor. At that time I was not in supervision yet, but I had a coach. So I went to my coach and I said, this is terrible. This is horrible. I did a terrible job. I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back because I don't want to put my face in front of everybody else. I was so ashamed. And then I kept going, and then I started laughing. And we both were laughing. So we went from making so meaningful, like, okay, this was not a good session. I was not very present to the client. I was present about looking good. Any time happened to you that we had to perform and we had to look good? So I was more worried about looking good than I was just being present for my client. Because when you're present to your client, no matter what, you cannot go wrong. Because you are completely to the service of your client, mentoring, supervising, coaching. When you are not worried about performing, then you can be relaxed and you can do good work. Not perfect, but. So I like to share the story about performance anxiety and wanting to look good. And so if we let that go of all of that, we can connect. And when we can connect, we can be more effective at all of the different levels. And we don't need to know all of the information. That is a key element. Remember, when we went through coaching and supervision training, and we're talking about the 7-9 model and what was the client. And sometimes the coach feel that they need to let the supervisor know all of the details about the client. Sometimes it's not necessary to know all of the details. It's more important to know what's happening to the coach and how they're really into the experience and knowing all of the details about the client. When in team coaching supervision is the same thing, the supervisor does not need to know the details of everything happening in the system to understand the system. Needs to just have an angle, get a piece that the coach wants to explore and work with that angle and that issue and that concern and that specific piece of the whole puzzle to work on.
So,
Yes.
Damian?
Yes.
Question.
Sorry.
Yeah, go
I
ahead,
want
Jocelyn.
to ask a
Someone go ahead. Someone go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, so in group supervision, what would be the ideal size of the group? Because too big would also become too complex. So what in your mind is the ideal size for a group supervision?
Well, this is a great question, and you have different opinions. I hear Monica has a lot of experience in that, and I think we agreed about that. Monica, what would you say? What is your preferred number for
Well, I like 6. I mean, I say ideally 6, and sometimes I take 7 because inevitably somebody's going to be away. But I've done it with 2. Sometimes, 4 people are away, and we do it. The main thing is the psychological safety. I think if you can build a psychological safety, more than 6 or 7 is too many. It definitely is. But for me personally, I can work well with that. Yeah.
And one way to look at it too is, I agree with Monica. My favorite number is 5. I like 5. But sometimes there are 4, sometimes there are 6, 7. I have done once, but it's pushing it a little bit. Why? Because you have 2 hours.
Yeah.
And in these 2 hours, everybody who wants to bring a case should have a space. And usually you need around 30 minutes for a session. So average. So like if you have 2 hours, ideal number is 5 or 6. So everybody has 20 minutes to 30 minutes to present the cases. If you have more, and not everybody present every time. You have a group of 5 or 6, maybe there are 4 who want to bring cases, or 3 or 2. Sometimes you don't need to bring a case every session. Janelvir, how was your conversation with Kevin?
Yes.
What do you want to add?
I was about to talk. Thank you very much for your experience. I'm supervising a group in Africa right now, a group of coaches in Africa. And I have really been challenged at the beginning because people come at the last moment. I try to check who is coming at least 1 week before, but I have been up to 9 people. So I have invented something. So when they come, not all of them can ask a question. I ask who has a case or an issue or something. And I mean, up to now, they have always left with something, and even they wanted to renew it this year. So I have 9 or 10, but not all of them speak a lot, not 20 minutes, but they might bring an idea, they might bring something to the system that really add to they're willing to shift their perspective. But I take one case, an issue, or at least 2. And one day what happened to me is that 2 people came with a case and they want to deal with both of the cases. So that was really challenging. And we have to find a thread between both cases. That was really something I did with my supervisor at that time. I was really feeling, I have to be frank with you, I felt really fear during that time because time was ticking and they wanted to do it. So depending on the context, it can be more than 5 or 6.
Yeah, time is one of the challenges in group supervision.
I know.
This is one of the, like I remember
Yes.
in classes I asked participants, what is the main challenge in group supervision? Remember, Jocelyn, recently that I asked that, and people were saying all these kind of things, and nobody was saying like time management. This is now what you're bringing, Janelvir, is another variable that is dropping groups. Dropping groups are group supervision where people don't have to commit to come every session. Many times organizations offer that, and I have participants in some of my group supervisions that are supervising in dropping groups, and it's challenging because you never know who is going to show up. You never know what may happen. It's like a surprise every session. And some people may like it, some people may not like it as much. And also people are arriving to the group supervision with different expectations. When there is no consistency, that psychological safety is much more difficult to accomplish. How do you get people to be really open and vulnerable when they don't build a relationship? When they are showing up, you never know who show up. Today they are there, next month they may not show up. So this is another variable to pay attention to. But there are organizations now that are offering dropping group supervision. So you never know who is going to show up and how many people will be there.
So this year, I started again in February, and I asked the organization to let me to at least 1 week before, and it is working. I mean, those who were present last year, they all came back, plus 2 people. That's why we are now 9. And this is, I love the name. I didn't know that it was called dropping sessions. Definitely, people come and sometime I only know it 1 week before.
And in some organizations, people don't even know who are going to show up. So there is a service available to all coaches, particularly organizations who offer coaching services to their clients, and they offer to their coaches to participate and receive supervision. What I think it's good, but they have disadvantages and disadvantages when it's a dropping group. Kevin, anything that you want to add?
No, we had a good conversation. I love the fact that Jean Elvier likes complexity, and you definitely get that in team coaching as well as group supervision as well. So the complexity is there. The other thing that we talked about also is, and I think the fundamental difference for me between individual and group supervision is just the amount of energy that you need to have Because when you're doing one-on-one, you're there and present to help that person. Whereas in a group, because you have other people there, everybody learns, which is great. But as the supervisor or trying to facilitate this session, you're also cognizant of every single person. And I was just saying, for me as an introvert, that takes a lot of energy out of me to have to facilitate that, to make sure that everyone participates, make sure everyone asks clarifying questions, everyone is able to peel down the onions. So that just, for me, it just takes something out, which is quite different for me from an energy perspective as opposed to individual supervision.
Thank you for bringing this up, Kevin, because the same way is in the other direction. As supervisors, we may like more or feel more comfortable with individuals or with groups. For participants, it's the same. For people receiving supervision, there are some people who do not want to receive supervision with other people because they, with the shame thing, like the story that I shared with you before, at the end, I missed the link with the shame piece, that I feel a lot of shame. And then I went back to the group. But so that experience of shame is important to verbalize it and articulate it in language and to bring it to the conversation when you're working with groups. And the way you may do that is through ground rules at the beginning. So this is so important in group supervision, to spend time in agreeing and setting up ground rules and agreements about how they're going to be working together and what will happen in different scenarios to create a psychological safety. Jaya?
Yeah, I mean, in fact,
Yeah, go ahead.
that's very culturally true, by the way. In India, we find it so difficult to get people in the group to talk. Supervision in group is so tough in India. At least in India, I have seen that people don't want to open up. They want to come for one-to-one. That too, they don't want to get vulnerable. I think it has a lot to do with the culture of shame, because, and another thing is because the group comes together, everybody knows each other, and that's the place they work. They don't want anybody to know their shortcomings. Huge resistance, huge resistance.
Thank you for
That has
bringing
been my
that's an important component too, the cultural issues too.
culture.
Jocelyn, you have raised your hand before. You want to say something? Do you remember what was it?
No, it's no longer relevant. We kind of
Okay.
moved on, so that's okay. But thanks.
Okay.
I just love what Daya said. We have to bring more attention to the context and the culture, because coaching or supervising in India, as Jaya is saying, or in Africa, is not the same. But people has a lot to say. So psychological safety, as you were saying, Damian, is of paramount importance, because if it is not set, nothing will come out of people.
It's interesting what you say, Elvira, about coaches have a lot to say. It's like in my experience, many times when we're working with clients, we are listening more than talking. But when you are with other coaches don't stop talking. Like you see, like in conferences and events, I have like a bell to stop, to stop people talking from exercises. You cannot stop them because they have a lot to say and share. Now, the other piece.
Another piece I've noticed
Yeah.
is that the conversations are more external. So they will say things like, people should do this, coaches should do that. And they do not talk about themselves. And I have to say, hello, just say, I do this, or, I
Right.
suffer from this. And that's my challenge. They don't want to own it, right? So the language is around coaches should do this, and teams should do this, and organizations should do this. So that's also a piece that I've seen, that they try to hide behind language and try to externalize it, saying, no, it's not my issue, but I've seen others doing it.
One more element, Jaya, is when you work in organizations, and that had happened to me, that I was supervising coaches inside the same organization. And then there is an issue of safety and confidentiality, because they are talking about people they are coaching that other people may know. So group coaching for internal coaches is another area that can be tricky. Can everybody see that? For internal coaches, when the internal coaches receive supervision, how they preserve the confidentiality of the participant that they are coaching.
Absolutely. Very tough area.
Yeah. Well, the time flies. We are just at the top of the hour. We have 5 more minutes. Any comments, observation before we go?
Damian, I'd just like to say how we talked about the richness of coaching and of groups. This one has been extremely enriching. Once again, they always are with you. The session, I was in the session with Jaya and Saman, and it was a very interesting conversation in its own right. Obviously, one could go a lot deeper when you're with 3 people. But no, thank you. It's been a lot of learning from it. Thank you.
So what I want to invite everybody is in the chat box to put your email if you want to. It's not mandatory, but if you want to write your email and you want to connect with each other, particularly, for example, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a social media space where you can connect and communicate and engage. So if you want to, before you go in the chat box, write your information so that people can find you and connect with you. I think this is nice, like when you spend some time with other colleagues to continue the communication. And you never know what you can learn from them. You may connect through different LinkedIn or other social media too. So let's spend a minute being sure that you all can share your emails or your website or your LinkedIn, like Kevin, your LinkedIn link. That's a good one too, to make it easier for people to find you. I want to do that.
Quick question.
Yes.
I have time, so this drop-in group supervision, I find it hard to sort of understand how we can contain the anxiety because it's different people each time. So sort of in my mind, I hold the notion that safety comes with, a boundary of who's there. So I'm just kind of struggling with that a little bit.
No, it is. I agree with you. It's a really good point. For the supervisor, it's challenging. Particularly, for example, Genevieve, for you, you have 9 people, in advance who's going to show up, may not be more than 9 people. But in other contexts, in other organizations, they offer the service and you never know who is going to show up. And most of the time, people, because they are coaches and they're trained, they're open and flexible and vulnerable and supportive. But there may be cases that is not that happen. So thanks, everybody. Great spending time with you. So next month, do we have any volunteer for next month who would like to facilitate a conversation on a topic? Jaya, what don't you do? You don't need to prepare a lecture, or you can talk about your cards too, for people who don't know them, you can do an activity with your cards.
I can do that, Damian. Happy to.
Okay, great. And Kevin, everybody, Genevieve should have that. Genevieve have done it in the past a few times.
So I will come back this year with deepening my adult development supervision. I will tell you.
That sounds great. Just let me know. I need to, because we create this between all of us together. So think about what day, what month you want to do it. Paul Barton, you're shy, but you have a lot to offer. So think about it. And Fravan, I don't know how you manage not to do a presentation yet after all of these years, with all of the experience that you have. These are all very experienced colleagues here. Okay, so help me, support me, coming up with some ideas. So we have Jaya in March, and we have another colleague from Australia in April. So we need for the rest of the year. So let me know what month you want to do it, and we'll put you in the schedule. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, evening. I also want to remind everybody about the supervision conference. The conference is coming up 10 and 11. It's not great time for Asia, but I think India, you can still manage in India. For people in Singapore, because of the time difference, it's challenging. But if you can make it, it's going to be worthwhile. It's going to be a good conference.
Thank you,
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.